Right then, guys and girls, hello, welcome back. Let's get away from the gloom and doom of how society's supposedly collapsing. So, got a package today from Amazon. Yeah, well chuffed. I do like the delivery service from Amazon, especially when you get it delivered at work. And what I have here is a test-long endoscope. Yes, endoscope, which is for poking in holes. Okay, if you've been to the doctors, you might have had an endoscopy. Well, they put a camera down your throat, or maybe up the other way, to inspect the insides. Well, mechanics do the same thing, but we don't do it for bodies, we do it for mechanical parts. So if there's a hole there, we can stick a camera through and have a look at the internals, okay? And I will show you later a review of this. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about servicing on a D-Max. It's called a P130 vehicle. Now, this is a 24,000 mile service, which is roughly about a 2-year service interval. Okay, and yeah, four-wheel drive vehicles have much more intense service intervals, and you can see by the oil here, this is the diff oil, you can see the shiny silver bits, that's actually metal, yeah, metal swarf, and yeah, it has to be done because mechanical components do actually wear up, okay, especially when the oil gets worn. So this is what we keep on top of, and this is what maintenance is all about. So garage situation using a pump, okay. When you use one of these pumps, you've got to get skilled at getting just the right amount in, and that's what you should be looking for without it gushing back out at you, okay? So that job's done and finished. Diffs, transfer box, oil change, gearbox doesn't get changed. So the vehicle we're servicing here is an Isuzu D-Max. Now, this is called the P130 platform, simply because it has a Cumberland's platform limited cherry picker on it. Isuzu diesel, don't ask me what litre it is, and I don't know what engine model designation number it is at all, because we don't have any details on it, being a DAF dealership. But just for a side view, you can see this here. It's a nice vehicle actually, and quite reliable. We haven't had any problems with them at all. 69 plate, yep, so that's 2019 or late 2019. And the people who put the platforms on here, Cumberland Platforms Limited, I'm not sure you're interested in it, it's just for details. And this actually gives the details, and this is about the only details we really have on the D-Max at the moment. And yeah, we actually service quite a variety of cherry pickers, all from the same company. Yeah, quite interesting equipment actually. It is actually electric powered hydraulics on this, works well. For those guys who are not interested in the utility side of it and just want to look at the vehicle, well, there's plenty of information on the internet, isn't there? So this is one from New Zealand. I prefer the N series, which is forward control. It must be something from the industry I work in. Forward control is like this, where you're sitting on top of the engine. The Isuzu N series is quite nice. The issue we have, preppers, is that a lot of dealerships now are pulling out from selling Isuzu commercial parts. Okay, even though we've got dealerships there, we couldn't find any filters for it because the companies that we deal with are now not selling parts, including filters. Never mind, there is always places to get things. So what I'll do here is my opinions, what I look for when I'm looking at a vehicle. Then we'll do a little bit of service information, okay, or servicing information. Now, under tray, engine and transmission protection plates, that's yeah, quite substantial actually compared to a car, but not as heavy as some vehicles or the aftermarket stuff. This is the actual manufacturer's addition to, which is quite thin. Now, we've had experience with under trays. The heavier they are, the more damage they cause if they do get bashed, which means that you have to use heat hammers or replace the parts. But when they bend up, they can also damage the components that they're protecting. So this, I think, is a compromise, but it seems to work. You can see that the vehicle does go off-road by the scrapes on it. But I'm going to show you now here components. We have front suspension, independent front suspension, which is a double wishbone arrangement. Okay, so you can see the wishbone there is bushed. Also, it seems to be more common as well with medium weight vans, double wishbone arrangement. This has a car horse spring between the bottom wishbones rather than a coilover on the shock absorber. And of course the bushes do go wrong. Look at this, look at the plane. This is an absolute nightmare. But also the designers, engineers, the body mount bracket is stopping you from getting the bolts out at the top left hand one there. You can see that. Such is life. And there is also a single beam, okay, with a ball joint, and you'll probably see, if you look up to the right at the top corner there, there is a stabilizer for that system. This is also Iveco. Now there is a way of checking this, and this is like using a shaker plate at an MOT station. You don't see these on light car vehicles, you see them in HGV places where they actually shake the front axle wheels and you can see the components move, okay, if there's any play in them. So the whole idea about this is to put weight on the bar and then rock the wheels so you can see if the suspension ball joints on the wishbones have got play in them. Yeah, simple as that, okay, and this is the operation that we do, so this is what I do. And then if they're knackered, we then change them. So moving further along, this is a ladder frame chassis, okay, you have the front diff there, okay, which is tucked nicely, and it is protected by a plate which you do need to remove if you're going to change the oil in that transmission component, which of course is time, and this plate is held on with nice big bolts, okay, so it's tucked up nicely in there, a bit like the ladder that I showed you before in one of the videos, a project preferential vehicle that I'd like to get, although I like this one as well, believe it or not. Yeah, I like four-wheel drives, but of course they're too expensive at the moment. So yeah, basically drain the oil and replenish, okay, so you can see where it's nested. As a general rule of thumb, the final drive, not the differential is part of the final drive, will take an extreme pressure oil, which is EP oil, but the manufacturers might state something different. This Iveco has a very thick oil in it, and you can see it's already in need of a change. This Isuzu, driven by prop shafts, okay, and this is freewheeling when it's not engaged. It's electronic selection, and of course prop shafts have to be greased quite regularly, once a week if it's going off-road, okay, otherwise they do fail, they get water in them and then they seize, okay. That's front and rear. So here's the rear prop shaft, centre bearing as a support because it's quite long, and then we have the brake calipers here, front brake calipers sliding with double piston, adjustable setting for the wishbone bushes, okay, and then this is the lowest part of the vehicle at the front, okay, which is the wishbone brackets. Transfer box here is electronically selected. As you can see, there's a module on the back which will select your high and low two-wheel or four-wheel drive. Yep. And then going to the back axle, it's conventional leaf spring, okay, with drum brakes, yeah, and bolt on hub, so the bearing is a one piece. I can tell that just from looking at that, okay. And airbags, yeah, this actually increases the payload, and it does need it, because without that the platform makes the whole vehicle sag at the back end, so that's a good addition. Rear diff here, okay. Now what I found out with this is the dominant diff, because it's only part-time four-wheel drive. The oil wears up, and it wears up a lot quicker than the front. Now we've had a few issues with the Isuzus, not down to the production of it or the manufacturer's fault. It's actually because they're braking due to the driver's situation and the environment it works in. So use the endoscope there. Okay, so shock absorbers attached, and then there's a tank protector here, okay, which is only light tin, but it's good enough, no damaging on tanks at all. So yeah, you get the general ideas. Lambda sensor there, downstream lambda sensor, and then you have a slave cylinder. Makes a difference if you look at these little details. A slave cylinder on the outside of the gearbox, yeah, so there we go. We have the bushes there on the brackets for the wishbones, and they're accessible. Yes, I know some guys don't think of it until they have to go around to the job, but when you look and you think, oh, I can get those bolts out, makes the whole job easier. So the top here, now a little tip here, if you notice that you have all sorts of clips on your engine, if you have worm drive clips, okay, like on this, compared to the cooling system, which have these spring clips, okay, they are removable of course, but This would denote this is a brand new vehicle or 2 years old. Then anything that has a worm drive on it will mean that you can remove it, and it's probably there for maintenance purposes, so you can refit it. Okay. Anyway, blueprint air filter, not an Isuzu one. I told you that we can't get filters for them. So again, we have a worm drive clip there. From air filter to turbo, yeah, that means you can take that off and have a look at the turbo splines. But also on the top intercooler hose, this is after intercooler, needs checking, okay, because of oil content in there regularly on the service. Just a quick one here is the exhaust. You have a lambda sensor, okay, and then a catalytic converter on the back of the turbo, and there's a temperature sensor on there. Useless details until you need to know. Yeah, the whole turbo itself, it should be a dual turbo, but I'm not 100% sure on this. It has a pressure sensor there for crankcase pressure, and yeah. Now, this is a different Isuzu engine. This is an earlier engine. Oil filter at the top, which is great. Look, it's even got a little spill tray there, which is brilliant from a maintenance service perspective, where you can quickly change the canister filter. Not on this one, okay, because it's down there somewhere, tucked away underneath a load of loom wires. Okay, so this one, I've showed you this in a video before. This is for Transits and Citroens. It also does actually work on this vehicle when you're trying to access the filter from the top, but it's a bitch to get to. Yes, leaning in is okay, but actually trying to remove the filter, you have to take it round the back. Okay, so there you go. There's a cartridge filter type with a plastic cap. Nightmare at the best of times, but refitting it again, yeah, and I'm sure somebody said, well, yeah, you go through the wheel arch. Yes, you do, you go through the wheel arch, and it seems to be a common practice these days, these bastard engineers that think that we are multi-jointed and acrobatic. Yes, this is what you have to do, really. This is the easiest way to do it. Remove the skirting, reach the filter, and you can take it out there, okay? Which means you can use a different tool. This is a ratchet spanner to tighten it up to 25 Newton meters, of course, because it's, yeah, you have to do it by feel, but there you go. There's a ratchet spanner, 27 mil, okay, so there it is. The filter's been replaced. So yeah, again, you'll see the pumps that I use at work pumping in. Now, as I said, we didn't have much details on these vehicles because we deal in trucks. We've got all the information for the trucks, but when it comes down to getting any information on lighter commercial vehicles, then we're stuck. We have to do what you do, the DIYers do, and do investigations on Google, ask questions, and find somebody who might have an auto data book, okay? But the trick here is to pump oil in, check the level, pump some more in. Once you get a few of these vehicles and you've done them a few times, you know exactly how much oil to put in. So that's 7.54 litres up to the top mark before the filter is replaced, okay? Now the fuel filter, I'm just going to remove the O-ring here, okay? Now this is a bit of an odd one because you don't actually remove the filter, or do you empty it out? It's actually a pot that stands like this, okay, and you just take the top off. Here is a non-damaging O-ring pick, okay, so you can slide the O-rings over that or remove them without damaging the casing, because if the casing gets damaged it will leak. So oil filter here, and you'll probably notice I've got it a little bit dirty, and it doesn't seem to affect at all because that's the outside of the filter, okay, so I'll pop it in there as such. This is a strange filter thing, but this is obviously what they've designed. It's a design from Isuzu. It works, okay. Earlier Isuzu is exactly the same, so we'll pop that in there and then tighten the cap screw back up again, okay. Now it does have sensors in here, a water sensor and another one which I don't know what it's for, okay, but that needs to be unplugged before you can take the cap off. And then plug it back in, boom, away you go. Now there is a drain on the bottom of the filter as well. Priming it up is a hand primer at the top there, so once you've sealed it, then you just prime it up and away you go. But also it's for removing the water content out of the bottom of this filter just here, okay. So this is a primary and a secondary filter, and yes, it does go onto the bodywork. which you need to wash off afterwards, which we usually do. We steam clean it. After an oil change, you need to tell the ECU that the oil's been changed, because it calculates for diesel dilution into the oil, believe it or not. Couldn't get in with it with a snap-on one, so we used a Foxwell. Yeah, a cheap one that Andy actually has. He's bought this. This has got a lot of facilities on it for 135 quid. Surprised here. And it did have Isuzu on the list. Okay, so you can get a rough idea what's in here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll tell it that it's had an oil change so it can do its calculations. Yeah, very, very important. Otherwise, especially with Isuzus, and this is from experience, they put on mill lights and get really upset. Okay, so if you'd had your wits about you, you'd have seen the tyres here. BF Goodrich all-terrain tyres. Reinforced shoulders, yes. Okay, well, we'll get over that and let's have a look at the size. But what I want to show you is about the load and speed ratings today. Don't know what that means, load range D, but what you need to do is look above that and look at the numbers. 113/110S. Now that is a load ratings and a speed rating for the tyre. Okay, so load indexes. The 113, which is the first number here, denounced that it's 1,150 kilograms. 110 is 1,060 kilograms. Why is there a difference? Well, that's the difference between twin wheel fixings and single wheel fixings. So if you have a single wheel fixing and you have two of them on there, so 113 is 1,150 kilograms, you times that by 2, that's the maximum axle weight, 2,300 kilograms. Yeah, so the second number, 110, which equals to 1,060 kilograms, you times that by 4 on a twin wheel axle, that will be 4 tons 240 kilograms maximum. So the other suffix on there, S, which you can see there, which I've chalked for you, S will be a maximum of 112 miles an hour. Yes, okay, so a little bit of education for you. This is what you need to look at when you're looking at your vehicles to make sure the tyres can cope with the loads. Okay, so we're going to summarize this now, because after an inspection, 24,000 mile service, which is a 2-year annual service really. These are the extras that come with this vehicle, but it's applicable to quite a lot of utility 4-wheel drive. So usual engine and oil filter replace. Okay, and as I said, we reset the dilution, diesel dilution in oil. Vital these days, whether it's a Ford Transit or it's an Isuzu. Fuel filters, yeah, well, what we do is replace the filter and drain the housing to make sure there's no water in there. Okay, next one, air filter and pollen filter replace. Well, generally what we'd do is do an air filter on every single service if it's working in a dusty environment. Pollen filter is just a luxury. 2 years, final drives and transfer box oil replace, not the gearbox on this one. Okay, brake fluid change, .4 at 2 years. I've told you about this before in videos. Yep, that's what we have to do. Re-grease front wheel bearings, that's what's required on this specific vehicle, believe it or not, and those are the extras. Okay, so generally guys, I haven't covered every single detail about servicing on this vehicle, because this video would be hours long to try and cover all the details, but I've just shown you a couple of pieces. Okay, what's synonymous with this 4x4 pickup truck with independent front suspension and a rear beam axle is the service interval for the diffs, also the brake fluid and such like. Inspections is always the first thing we do on a vehicle, is check it over for defects, for regulations, to make sure everything is as it should be for MOT, and then we will do a service and any parts replacing or rectification or defects rectification. That is generally the way that we roll in the UK. Other countries may do things differently, but it's getting into a routine. If you own a vehicle and you can inspect it, which I will teach you to do, which I'm doing through these videos, you then have more reliability on the vehicle, because you know when to change oils and when to replace components.